You're listening to the Mind Your Business podcast. Today's episode is all about developing a mastery in manifesting. This is going to be a good one, so stay tuned. Hi, I'm James Wedmore, and with 13 years online, I've built my business to over $9 million in sales per year. And this is the first non-business business podcast that shows you how to apply the principles of spirituality, energy, and mindset to create true and lasting success, all from the inside out. This is the Mind Your Business podcast. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? James Wedmore here. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in to the Mind Your Business podcast. I am your host with the most, and this is the show that nourishes your entrepreneurial soul and feeds that business brain of yours. And we're going to get into a big, deepened, advanced. This isn't 101. This is like 202 or 303 level conversation around manifesting. I got a lot of important stuff. I'm going to talk about some simple tactics. I'm going to talk about a completely different way of approaching your relationship with manifesting. I'm going to give you techniques. I'm going to show you what I believe is the biggest missing piece to being a more powerful manifester. So much more on this episode. And I'm just like laughing. It's so comical to me in a way because, you know, when I started this podcast, I wrote about this recently that when I started this podcast, I started talking about all these weird things. Did you know I had an email list of over 170,000 email subscribers? Within 6 months, it dropped to less than 30,000. Why? What caused that? This podcast. You see, I was the YouTube guy. And when I built $1 million business around YouTube, there was that nagging part of me that could no longer hold it within this desire to talk about the things that I wanted to talk about that became this podcast. And back then there were so many people. I mean, this isn't that long ago. This is 2015, 2016. And people were like, whoa, this guy's gone off the deep end. This guy is crazy pants. And I remember getting like negative negative reviews. Like, I can't build my business with this weird woo-woo bullshit and all that type of stuff. And I was like, I got to be honest and tell you what worked for me. And here I am, like, I don't think anybody listening would have any level of doubt or skepticism. Like, it is so real and proven. And I'm talking 6+ years, however long it's been later, a decade of like learning manifesting and applying it in your daily life. And it's just accelerated for me and others that practice these principles. And there's just more and more evidence of it. And it's like, it's such a beautiful place to be in where it's like, you don't need to like convince somebody, did you know there's this thing like law of attraction? Instead, it's like, how can we just practice it better today? So we're going to get into that and more in just a moment. I like to give little updates as we get started because my team and I was just in San Diego. That's right. We were in San Diego for an event, Traffic and Conversions. I hadn't been to that event for a while. And I'll just give you the skinny lowdown on, you know, my takeaways. We came for some very specific intentions. We're doing a huge push on our social platforms over the next year. We're really excited about that. And there were 3 big takeaways that were like huge confirming statements or sentiments from the event. TikTok ads and YouTube shorts. That's the takeaway. We're doing a huge emphasis on TikTok. And there's some amazing and just impressive stats. Like, there's almost as many users now on TikTok as there is on Instagram. But like the average watch time per user on TikTok is something like crazy, like is 8 to 10 times more on TikTok. That's why you see, I'm assuming, everybody else trying to be like TikTok, trying to change their platform to be more like TikTok. Now we see YouTube doing that. A lot of people were talking about TikTok ads. We've run TikTok ads. I'm very excited to do more with TikTok ads, but also YouTube shorts. So we're in a phase in the business where I'm really excited to create a ton of content, both long form, like the podcast, and short form. And I'm going to bring you some Biz Tip Friday episodes. So I'll probably do a Biz Tip Friday episode talking about TikTok again. I started this at the beginning of 2022, but I want to now share my take on what I've learned and what I'm seeing. And if you are just getting started on there, some things that will really benefit you. So get ready for that. Get excited for that because I love to share what's working now with you, my listeners. So without further ado, I do want to get into this episode because I'm looking at my notes that I wrote, and let's just say I manifested a lot of talking points, a lot of things I want to share with you today. And here's my best advice. This is the best advice I can give you right now, right out of the gate. As you listen to this episode, whatever it is that you're doing, there's in the game and then the sidelines, as a metaphor for like sports. As you're listening to this episode, this is the moment and this is the time to be in the game with your own life. And what that means is as you listen, you can do two things at once. You can listen to me and my voice, and you can be intentional about, it's like intentional daydreaming. And you can be intentional about what you're causing, creating, and authoring next in your life. So use this time not just to learn something new and go, oh, that's nice, or oh, I knew that already, or oh, thanks for the reminder. I'm not here to like just give you reminders. I'm here to help you apply that which you know. So use this time, this hour that we have together, as an hour of intentional application of principles that maybe maybe you've forgotten about, or maybe you're learning for the first time. Okay. That's the best advice I can give to you, because when I walk away from, the amount of books I've read on manifesting, the hours and hours and hours of Abraham Hicks and conferences and all those books and audios and the amount of content that I've absorbed is one thing. But then to distill it and live it and see it over and over and over again in my life, I want to make it even more simple. And we can make it really simple by focusing on one thing, which is your attention. In any given moment, you have your attention on something. Unfortunately, we live a lot of our day unconscious or in a bit of an autopilot state. So we're not really aware of where our awareness is. And when we're in a lot of our thinking brain and going through the routine automatic thoughts of the day, we don't even begin to notice where your attention is that is not where you would like it to be. And then when we allow our mind to be on autopilot throughout the day, and there's all these studies, like 90% of our thoughts are repeated, or we're like 90% of the day is like automatic, and kind of in a less present state than we maybe should be. And then before we even realize it, we've begun to feed these thoughts and takes us or deviates us off of our path. And so that's going to be the anchor point that I'm going to keep coming back to, is attention. Where's your attention? If you think about any time in the last few days where you've been really maybe like in a lot of fear, uncertainty, doubt, worry, or anxiety, where was your attention? And what were we feeding even unconsciously? And what has been a constant practice for me is how to develop that discipline of being conscious and present to where my attention is, and recognizing that at any moment you can direct it. One great way to do this is by consuming the right type of content and information. I think a great practice is to continue to read or consume content, books, podcasts, audios, whatever, et cetera, beyond this episode, that will practice putting you in a place where your attention is directed in an outcome or a direction that you want it to go. So continuing to listen to content around manifesting or creating your vision or being intentional with what you want to create in your life will constantly force you to place your attention on what you want. And yes, we can make it as simple as that. Dare I make it over simplistic here, is a choice moment by moment to place our attention on what is wanted or unwanted. We could say, well, what about what is? Oh, that's beautiful. But there's something interesting within that. What is what is. And whether what is wanted or not becomes irrelevant, because it is. So something beautiful happens when there is no judgment or opinion or rejection of the what is. There is merely the acceptance of it. When there is the acceptance to what is, two things happen. Number one, you get your power back, because you're going to be pretty powerless when you reject the moment, when you judge or resist what is, because it is what is. So the classic cliche example is like being in traffic. If we're angry and upset that we're in traffic, we've all done it. I've done it. You're in that way rejecting or pushing away what is. And, it's not about putting whipped cream on garbage by saying, I love traffic, it's the best, if that's not really true for you. But if there's that sentiment of accepting that the present moment has presented itself as I am in traffic, there becomes a neutrality to it. And from that neutrality, we can choose next. We can be more powerful in choosing next. So just to give a simplistic example there. And so we'll keep coming back to this notion or distinction of attention. And it's either our attention is on what is wanted or what is unwanted, right? And that fleeting moment, wanted or not, has passed, and there'll be another one. So are we now keeping our intention on the past or what we want next? And if you recall from, believe it was the last episode, I talked a lot about what these invisible factors for our success. And one of these invisible factors for success is our relationship with the future. And I believe successful entrepreneurs have something in common in that they have a relationship with the future that is optimistic. And not optimistic like this pie in the sky hope. And I didn't really communicate that in that episode. So this is going to expand on that. It's not like I wish I could be successful. I wish my business that's optimistic, but it's kind of an out there thing. When I mean an optimistic future, I mean a knowing of what you want will happen with a level of certainty. Okay, so that's what I mean about that. So we'll keep coming back to that distinction about your attention. Where's your attention been right now? Ooh, what was the last thought you just had? Where are you putting your attention right now? Okay. All right. So you're ready to have an advanced conversation around manifesting with the sole intention of you becoming a more powerfully intentional and effective manifester of what you want. We can also say that we're always manifesting all the time, right? 24/7. I agree and believe that 100%, but are we intentional about it? So let's start with a definition. What does it mean to manifest? My favorite definition of all time that has really supported me and a ton of my students is manifestation is the physical byproduct of a dominant vibration. Vibration, everything, this is science, everything is frequency, right? Everything is energy, which means everything is in motion. And we can say it is vibrating. And frequency is a word that we use to measure the rate at which it vibrates. Like frequency, how frequent is it? So, higher frequency would mean something vibrates at a faster rate than something that is low frequency. So when people say low vibe, they mean some people say, negative or bad, but it's also a slower, like you can think Eeyore versus Tigger, right? Like low versus high, right? But it really helps if we're looking at everything through an energy conversation because everything is energy. And like I said before, we can then say that we are constantly manifesting. You're already doing it, whether you believe it or not. Okay. And this is about being more intentional about it, but it's also about raising your own frequency. And I think the challenge here that I kind of look at this differently is I think the hard thing is I think we look at it on a scale of low to high as in bad and good. And this is where a lot of spiritual ego comes in from people because they go, oh, my frequency's higher because I manifested more. So yours is lower so I can look down on you. That's pretty nasty and gross. So there's kind of this 3D ego interpretation of I can raise my vibe means I can look down on you. You don't know this stuff. And that's pretty nasty. If you ask me, that's more ego. So instead of us looking at frequency in a pecking order or a hierarchy of something is better than another, because that's just kind of defeats the purpose. It's just different. So I always love using the metaphor of the radio. And the older the radio, the better. Like the ones where you actually turned a dial and you could hear it change through certain stations. You wouldn't necessarily say some radio stations are better than others. You would have preferences. But there isn't an agreed upon, the higher you get on the radio stations, the better the music. There's just different frequencies and different preferences. So you are the radio, you are the dial, and you are the person changing the dial. And so what are you tuning to? What frequency are you tuning to? And then we can go, well, how do I do that? Well, let's go back to attention. Where are you placing your attention? Your entire internal world, which I know nothing about. your internal world. I don't know what you're thinking right now. I don't know what you're feeling. I don't know what sensations you're going through. I don't know how you feel, what emotions are coming up for you. But all of that we could say is like giving you the experience of your own energy, frequency. But we can be more intentional about it than we realize, right? That's been something that I've worked on, and it's a discipline. It's definitely discipline. We'll talk about that in a second. And so, yes, there's like, cool, I want to manifest stuff, but like the bigger thing is like holding a new frequency. And what I'd really want to begin calling, this is a good term, fortifying your frequency, which means setting the radio tuner to a new station and then living so powerfully in your life that whatever happens on the outside, whether it's the economy, your competitors, business, personal relationships, it doesn't affect you. That's going to be another episode. That takes work. Holy cow. That takes me a lot of work. But fortifying your frequency, because if we live from the outside in, then everything that happens out there affects the radio dial. So it's like life begins changing the radio dial. So I'm going to go to Fear FM today because I read something in the news, or something bad happened today, or I got an email from this and right? And I'm going to go to shame frequency, or I'm going to go to guilt frequency, or I'm going to go to anxiety frequency, right? Now, you go there. It's fine. Because then what we don't want to do is then you beat yourself up for going there. So now you're just piling on the shame sandwich here. It's just a matter of being present to where you're at and then finding your way back. And I believe that the more you find your way back to your new home, the more familiar it becomes, and the more familiar it becomes, the more it becomes the dominant frequency. But that takes work as well. Now, there's another conversation that we could have, but I want to get through a lot of stuff today, so I'll keep it really brief, which is really interesting when we're looking at like, I want to change my frequency. Okay, where's your attention? It tends to feel like more negative emotions people like to label as, negative emotions. There's a really powerful distinction that we can begin to ponder and discuss, that this negative emotion could be more, the best way I could say is like an indicator or a message or communication from your higher self, God, universe, creator. And that when you, with the free will that you have in this 3D, now 5D life, begin to place your attention on something that doesn't serve you, the same way that if you touch a hot stove with your hand, with your bare flesh, it would hurt. The pain is informing your entire being to move your hand away from the pot or the hot stove. And if you didn't have the sensation of pain, you might leave your hand on the hot stove and melt your flesh off. So pain becomes that blessing because pain is informing us to pay attention and to take an action away from it. And I always love to ponder and say, what if prolonged negative or uncomfortable or disempowering emotions is an indicator from our higher self to do the exact same thing, to move your attention away from that which is not true. And when I tell this to people, I get a lot of pushback or like, that's crazy pants. Yeah, I know. Well, I'm not here to tell you what you already know. I'm here to push it a little bit further, but just try it out for yourself and prove it. So before we continue, one of the things that does, I don't know, it doesn't concern me, but I want to address it. I want to address this concern is that when I started this podcast, and I'm going to give some tough love here for a moment. So buckle up. I kind of noticed something when I started talking about things like manifesting and the universe and da-da-da-da-do. I kind of noticed that there were people that were, dare I say, I'm going to use a judgy word here, lazy. And lazy is one interpretation, but like people that don't really want to do the work. And by work, I mean like business work, like actually get to work. So it could be called lazy as one regard. I'm not saying the word hustle, but even I hustle. There's just a different meaning to me. My worth and value isn't attached to it, but some days you got to give your 1,000%. And so what I'm getting at here is that I noticed this, and I don't want this to happen moving forward. This is why this is advanced. Look, I'm going to be blunt, okay? I'm beating around the bush. I'm going to be blunt. A lot of people use these conversations around manifesting as an excuse to not get their butt off the couch. It's like it gives them permission in a way to not do. And the reality is we still live in an action-based, form-based reality where if I pick up my coffee cup, the coffee goes up, okay? I'm not going to just close my eyes and imagine I'm drinking the coffee on its own. So action is required in our physical universe. Okay? Now, where there's a middle ground is that a lot of people use action and, dare I say words like hustling to compensate for beliefs of inadequacy. Like, if I'm not good enough, then I will convince myself in the world that I am by my work. I will have my value as a human being determined by what I accomplish. Okay? Don't do that. But artists, kids, they create art just to create it. But they don't close their eyes and just imagine it and there it is on the canvas. They have to put the brush to the canvas and they have to do. So bluntly put, these conversations are not an excuse to be lazy or to not work at all, or to avoid something. That'd be a better way to say it, to avoid action, because it requires discipline. I still do work. I mean, just sitting here to do this podcast took time to write the notes. Actually, I took probably 3 weeks to compile all my notes on things I wanted to share, and then I took about 30 minutes to put it all on one Google Doc here, and then, it's 15 minutes to set up everything, and now I'm doing right now as I talk. Okay. And I think a lot of people, not a lot, but I think there's a group of people that kind of use this to get out of something, to avoid something. And the universe is going to teach you that lesson either now or later. And the later it gets to learn the lesson, the more painful it becomes. So learn it now, because I believe this is an important piece I want to get across. If anything, it requires more work. Once you learn these things like manifesting, it requires more discipline. It's a different kind of work. It's a discipline of the mind. It's very disciplined. In fact, as I've been on my spiritual path, I would say the thing that I've learned the most, one of the things that I've learned the most that I did not expect, was the importance and value of discipline. So what is discipline? Well, a discipline to me is two things. Number one, it's consistency. Consistency of any habit. Also, the discipline is your ability to exercise personal power over the ego. You see, I think we're constantly, as a human, we're constantly going to be at war with ourselves. There's going to be a part of you that doesn't want to do it, right? Whatever it is, like, I got to do this today. Oh, but I don't want to. There's going to be a part of you that wants to get into fear. There's going to be a part of you that has an excuse. There's going to be a part of you that argues for a limitation. And the discipline and that power required from you is to say no and do it anyways. To do the thing that you didn't feel like doing, to do the thing you didn't want to do. Or to course correct your attention and not feed the thing that you fear. Like, people go into the what ifs. Well, what if this? Well, what if that happens? What if? But all the what ifs are always negative. Do you ever notice that? If I asked you to write down what if statements right now, I would think everybody listening, 9 out of 10 people at least, would say, well, what if it doesn't work? What if it fails? What if it doesn't last? What if this? What if that's all negative? But how often do we then go, well, what if it exceeds my expectations? What if it blows me away? What if this was the best decision I ever made? What if I win? What if I grow? What if it works? What if it's easier than I thought? And that's what I'm talking about. And that takes discipline. That takes something that I'm going to get into in a moment that I think is the missing ingredient to more powerful and intentional manifesting. Okay. So we've kind of anchored this definition of manifestation. It's the physical byproduct, like it's evidence in the 3D world of a dominant vibration. So what is law of attraction? There's a lot of universal laws, like the great metaphor people use is like law of gravity. These are principles that govern the universe. And law of attraction is simply going to be boiled down to like attracts like. So when you tune your radio dial, your radio to 101.1, or 95.5 KLOS, then it attracts that radio frequency. Okay? Now, of course, there's a lag for all of us. Unless you come to Sedona, man, things happen like that out here. Good and bad. So you got to be really on your game. So there's a lag. So what happens is people go, oh, this sounds nice. And they do this for 5 minutes, or they do this on this podcast, and they go back and the rest of the day goes back. So what was the definition again? The physical byproduct of a dominant vibration. And I think that's a big piece about why people give up on it or think this is kind of hogwash or doesn't work, is you want to override a lifetime, a week, a day, a month of a dominant frequency with 20 minutes or 5 minutes of a visualization. And let's be honest, even when you did the visualization, you didn't even buy your own BS in the first place. And there's a level of knowing that must happen, a level of absolute certainty. And that's a muscle. So you start with the things that are easy to be certain. And then the real kicker here that's going to make it even easier for you to make this certain for you is remove time. If there's any doubt, remove time. A lot of people want to say like, no, play these games. It's like, I'm going to get this in 48 hours or less. That just stresses you out, man. Remove time. Anytime I ask somebody like, what's your goal? They're like, oh, I'd really love to make $1 million business. You think you can do that by the end of this year? And it's like October. They're like, oh, no. I say, do you think you're going to do this in your lifetime? Oh, absolutely. Notice, without the constraint of time, a certainty and knowing goes up. Now, we're not putting out there in someday, one day, but we also don't need to be so hard and rigorous on time, because that's something that I've noticed is that as long as I know and I don't care when, it's like there's just that knowing. It doesn't come when I want it to come. It comes when it needs to come. It appears and presents itself when it needs to come. And so I don't stress about that. Okay? So that's the law of attraction. Like attracts like. Now, I really want us to be thinking in terms of everything is energy, because it is. So this isn't just about money. Okay, I think people just try to focus on like, I'm just going to manifest some money, which is great. We can talk about the energy of money on another episode. But look at everything through the lens of what you're attracting. Look at the people that you're attracting into your life, like moving forward. Look at the random people that you connect with on social media that there could be a great partnership or relationship there, the peers, the mentors, the coaches. Look at the lifestyle that you want to attract. It's not just about money. Obviously, you know that. It's how you experience life. It's also how you spend your day as you work for that money. So broaden your scope and horizon of what you're manifesting. Don't just make it like a new car, new house, or like the typical cliched things. Why are they those things? Because society deemed that those are valuable and important and all that stuff, right? But manifest the things that are authentically, genuinely important to you and be intentional with that. And so what that really takes is, most importantly, getting very clear on what you want, what really matters to you. And we can do a whole episode on that. But, what are the things that are important to you? How do you want your day to feel? Now, that's the thing, is if that's how we want our day to feel, then we have to lead with that. That's where it's hard for people. How do you want it to look? I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times that people in the business, like someone will leave the company, quit, or we'll let them go. Boom, person manifested. I have so many cool manifesting stories. We should do a whole episode just on like amazing. I think I want to do one just on my house I manifested. But here's a cool one. A little side note to give you an example. Okay. And there'll be some lessons baked within here. When I first moved out to Sedona, I came out here with the intention of setting up some Airbnbs. And I had a couple of properties I just closed on. And I knew I didn't want to do it myself. So I wanted to get a manager. This woman comes to the house, does the whole, shtick presentation. And everything she said, it was a great presentation, let me tell you. Everything on paper was amazing. Yet something felt off for me. It just didn't feel right. And I asked her 2 questions. One on the interview, and the next was a follow-up. And it told me everything I needed to know. The first question I said is, this is very important to me. I said, everything you said is exactly what I'm looking for. She was a business. She had like a team under her. I said, here's my first question. I look at this as a business, and businesses have assets. And I see the listing with the reviews as an asset. So who owns the asset? And she goes, well, we do. And I said, there's no way you can do this where the listing is mine. And she said no. So that was a huge red flag. I was like, well, that's not what I want. And then as we were leaving, she told me, she goes, for 2 properties, here's the percentage that I take. But if you do a 3rd property, I drop the percentage 5 percentage points on all properties. Wow, that's a huge thing. Because she's like, I want to work with people that have more properties. So I had this thought, and I called her back 2 days later, and I said, I just realized one of the properties has a casita on it. So we can rent that out separately. I have my 3 properties. And she laughed at me. And she laughed like, oh, you got me. Darn it. Okay. Crap, and was not excited or positive. It was kind of like, I can't believe you hacked me or something. I was like, this is such a weird response to this. So I'm just like, I had these 2 red flags. I had this, weird feeling in my stomach of just kind of like, this is not a hell yes, but everything 3D just was like, hell yes, 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 yes. 3 days later, before I said yes or no to anything, I go to the property, one of the properties, and like a good new homeowner, I'm watering the backyard. And the next door neighbor over the fence is watering her backyard. And of course, I'm like trying to play it cool. I'm like, oh no, I'm the new owner and they're going to find out I'm an Airbnb and they're going to have something to say. So I didn't say anything. And I just asked, so like, how long have you lived here? She's like, oh, no, this is my sister's house. I just Airbnb it for her. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, this has been my goal wanted to come up to Sedona to do this. And I was like, well, you want another one? And that's my Airbnb manager today. So manifested people, places, things, circumstances, experiences. Okay. That's one of my favorite because we always joke today and not joke, just serious. Yeah, we manifested each other because that's what she was looking for. That's what I was looking for. And it's been a match made in heaven. She's incredible. She's amazing. Grateful for her every single day. And I could have gone with the logical left brain side of yeah, this all makes sense. Let's go with this company. They would have charged way more. They wouldn't have taken care of us and it wouldn't have been my own thing. And that's what I wanted. So I love that. I love that experience that I had. Okay. So I want to start getting into the hows, the how-tos, and how to become more, because that's what people want. Give me the techniques, give me the steps. And look, there are a lot of techniques out there, but I want you to look at it like this. They're all techniques to do something that you already know how to do. So it's like the perfect metaphor is Dumbo and the feather. As long as Dumbo focused on the feather, he flew, but then he realized he didn't need the feather. So the techniques of the feather, okay? And I wouldn't rely too much on a technique because then we get in our head about it. That's where I've landed today is that you don't need a technique per se, or there isn't one technique that's better than others. I think it's very easy for people to fall into this trap of needing this secret magic wand thing. And the moment you begin doing that, you've already made, I believe, the biggest error to being intentional with manifesting is thinking that it's something else is the magic wand, not you. But it is you. The feather didn't really make Dumbo fly. Those were his training wheels. And then he realized, I don't need it because I just need to believe in myself. Okay? I just need to live into that intent, the power of your intent to cause what I want to have happen. So be mindful of that part of your brain that wants to latch on to some magical, this 3-step manifesting technique. It's all cool and dandy if it works, but notice if you begin to put more importance on that than you. You are the technique. It's you. That's what's so exciting. Okay. So here's a better way to do this because we're all unique. I want you can do this now in the episode if you want, or you can do it right after, however you want to live your life. But you want to write down 3 to 5 things that you have already manifested. Now, again, people tend to think manifesting means things just magically appear out of thin air. Sometimes they do, but it's anything that is or has been in your bubble, your sphere, your life at all because everything's energy. And I just said manifesting or a manifestation is the physical byproduct of a dominant vibration. So 3 things that you really feel were like, I was intentional about that, or like I wanted that, or whatever. And you can label as, and like no one here listening can say, no, I've never manifested anything, because you just haven't been listening. So you manifested everything, but 3 things that you're really proud of or like really celebratory about that maybe at the time was a stretch for you, or it did feel like a miracle, or it felt like an impossibility at one point in your life, but now it's not. Could be your first client. Could be a home you got. Could be your partner. Doesn't matter. Write them down. And to the best of your ability, this is the secret. I mean, I haven't gotten to the missing piece yet, but this is the secret for you, is your job is to be a very curious scientist, to reverse engineer exactly what you did. It's an internal process. And the more internal, the better. So think about one of those things right now. And if you could put it down into steps, what were those steps? What did you do as an internal process to get what you got, to manifest what you manifested? And be very intentional and try to write down every single step for you. Now, what happens when I do this with a lot of people is there's common things. There's 2 common things that they say. Number 1 is there was a knowing. I just knew. So just put a pin in that because we're going to come back to that. There was just a knowing. I just knew. And number 2, there was also, sometimes it's one or the other, sometimes it's both. I love when it's both. There's this no trucks given attitude. There's this doesn't matter. There's a no importance. There was like, I didn't really put any importance on it. I didn't care if I got it or not. I didn't give it all this power or meaning or attachment. These are clues. So the best of your ability, you want to reverse engineer. For me, it's just getting clear on what I want, getting excited about it, into an emotional state about it. It helps to visualize it, see it in your mind, and just know it. That to me is one of the most important pieces, is just to know it. To know it and have complete freedom and detachment from it. Like the more you condition it, the more trouble you're in. Condition means I'll be happy when I have this. I'll be successful. That's when you've already lost. If a part of your brain has convinced you that you can't be happy without it, you can't be enough without it, you can't be successful without it, you can't be free without it, you're screwed. Because the universe is going to teach you that lesson that you need to learn, and it's going to continue to elude you until you learn the lesson. That's beautiful. That's one reason why, once you start making money, one of the reasons that you start to make more even faster. Because one of the things I've learned about wealthy people is they have so much less, and this is a big clue, so much less importance about money than people that don't have money. It's the people that don't have money that make money more important. Big clue right there. So you should, as an exercise or a practice, or right now in this episode, see what works for you. I love this metaphor. I remember reading this years ago about looking at manifesting like you just bought something on Amazon, right? So you get excited. You're like, oh yeah, this is it. Look at the reviews are awesome. I want it. Boom, bought it. And that same knowing that it's going to be here in a few days is the same type of knowing. Notice that it's subtle. You're not trying to force it. I think a lot of people are like, I'm so happy and I know this is going to happen. And you're like forcing it. It's like you're a bad actor. Okay. And you can lie to ourselves. You can't lie to the universe. It's like frequency doesn't lie. You're either on 101.1 or you're not. So if the Amazon metaphor helps, use it. Here's the other metaphor I've used for years, for a long time. This really helped me. It started with this. So here's the question for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high confidence, 1 being low, how confident are you that the sun is going to rise tomorrow? Now, most people, unless they're trying to be a polarity responder, contrarian type, and just like to challenge authority, say a 10. And I go, are you sure the sun's going to rise tomorrow? How do you feel about tomorrow? It's just the most subtle, effortless knowing. So I want you to think about tomorrow. Now, I didn't say whether you're going to be here or not. This could, for each and every one of us, this could be our last day. I'm just saying the sun rising tomorrow. Tomorrow happening. How does that feel? And where do you feel that in your body as a knowing about tomorrow? Also, do you get an image in your mind about it? And here's the trick. You want to superimpose and match up the same feeling, the same sensation, at the same level, the same type of knowing that you have about the sun rising tomorrow as you do about the thing that you're causing and creating and bringing into your reality. And what you notice is it's the same subtlety. It's not like I'm forcing anything. You're not forcing tomorrow to happen and then it will. It's a knowing. And that knowing is actually very subtle. So you get familiar with the feeling of knowing and try that. One of the things I want to take this conversation further is what I believe is a big missing piece about intentional manifesting. It's going to be super obvious once I say it, but it tends to be left out and it tends to be put on techniques and exercises. And I believe the missing piece is presence. And I'll go as far as to say is the more present you are in your day and in your life is the more intentional and effective you will manifest. And it's really as simple as this. The new outcome that you want, whatever that is, a result, an outcome, an experience, a person, place, thing, money, car, house, whatever it is, there's a frequency to that. So we're going to say it's the frequency of the new outcome. And then there's the frequency of the old or the frequency of 30 seconds ago. And presence, your presence, is required to choose. And I believe we're doing that moment by moment, consciously or not. We're going back into the old, because that's what's familiar. That's the autopilot. That's the way it's been. Or we choose something new. And if you began to just practice to create pockets of presence throughout your day, you may begin to become more aware of where your attention has been. And an instant, just like that, we can change or move your attention. You can choose throughout the day. It's like every time I get in the car, every time I go to the bathroom, every time I take a sip of water, I'm going to take a moment to get excited about or think about or be intentional about where my attention is and what I'm creating and what I'm doing next. Just like a shopping list. And little by little, if you become more present, you'll be more in a powerful place to be deliberate with where you hold your frequency. You'll catch yourself sooner when there are things that could pull you away from your attention. And the thing is like everything is about trying to steal your attention. And I think the thing that we were never taught was that it's the most valuable thing. If I'm telling you that at the core, what's going to determine what you manifest is where your frequency is, and your frequency is correlated to where your attention is, then is not your attention one of the most valuable things that you have, if you will? And that's what everything is fighting for. And so, I've done episodes in the past, and I always get people, I have a lot of unpopular opinions, folks, but you're here for it. People get upset when I've had people leave like nasty reviews because I say I'm very careful not to watch the news. I can still stay informed, but commercials, I don't watch TV. There's also, I see a lot of people complain about this, like I can't believe people are giving advice not to watch TV. That's ridiculous. Successful people don't. I watch TV. It's like, do what you want. Okay? None of those things cause or not cause success. But let me be clear. All of those things are fighting for your frickin' attention. And if you're living on autopilot, they hijack it. Period. I'm a huge movie buff. I love watching movies. So I spend time that is my downtime to watch movies that I love. And that's where I choose to put my attention. And that's wonderful. But I'm also very intentional. I can also be very present while I watch a movie. And that actually is really neat because going to film school and understand how films are made, my attention is actually on other things than just being put into this hypnotic trance of whatever, is happening in the story. I'm like, oh, look at the editing choice. Oh, look at that needle drop they did there. Like, oh, wow, look at that shot they did, that angle. That's really neat, right? So I can actually keep my attention on other things even while watching a movie. Whereas I think the big sentiment here is you're letting your attention get hijacked by, the commercials, my goodness, the amount of noise and distractions, like, yes, you need this pill and you need to drink this beer and you need to do this, right? And then obviously we know a lot with like news is they have to keep their ratings up by keeping you scared. So they're going to hijack your attention and say, here's why you need to be worried today. Now, that's wonderful that you stay informed, but can we be informed and fortify your frequency? In other words, can you stay educated in things that are important to you, that you would like to be in the know about, that you want to be informed about? I'm not saying be an ostrich and stick your head in the sand. As you want to be informed and educated about things, you absolutely should. But is everything hijacking your attention so that it spirals you emotionally? And then you're getting reacted to anything and everything. And look, that's exactly what people want, right? So fortifying our frequency and being in control of where we place our attention is going to be huge. And the more presence you bring into your life, the more you will be able to do that. And that's the practice. And that's the discipline. Because if you can imagine, if you think of any one person that is completely on autopilot their entire day, they're just like kind of hit the snooze button. And then you have someone juxtapose that is intentionally has created this discipline of created presence and awareness in their life where they slow down enough to be mindful of where they place their attention and what they feed and how they use their imagination and where they place their attention. Who's going to manifest more intentionally, right? If you use a logic test, it makes sense. So that's a huge missing piece for a lot of people. So if you just do a technique, which is great, do a technique. Awesome. There's all kinds of things, like vision boards. Love it. All right. Visualizations. Love it. Have you ever done mind movies? It's a vision board that's in movie form with music. Love it. Great. Do you need those things to manifest? No. And if you just did that for 5 minutes and then went about a day and fed a bunch of fear and it won't work and I don't believe any of this and blah, 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 is it going to work? No. And it's really interesting because the more you're present, or when you find yourself in the present, that's a beautiful thing. And one of my most favorite books, powerful, influential books on me is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, because it's clearly stated. And when you find yourself there, when you're in the present moment, you'll know it, because there's a state of subtle joy, of happiness that you feel when you're in the present. There's like this peace, there's an acceptance. There's more power, your personal power in that moment. And then when you're in that moment, it's like that's when you're going to be your most creative. And by creative, I mean creating your reality. So, food for thought. Okay, let me end this episode with 4 quick tips and a couple of cool tactics. How about that? Like, what's the difference between tip and a tactic? Well, the tip is just things to think about, and the tactic are specific things you can do that really help as well. So 4 tips. I would identify and begin to notice, how am I de-manifesting? Oh, it's not working. No, it's working. You're getting what you're putting out there. It ain't the radio, the law, the frequency. It ain't broken. And you aren't broken either. It's just you're manifesting something else. So begin to notice, how am I de-manifesting? For example, if you say you really want to do something in your business, but you're like scared as all hell to do it, well, the fear would be de-manifesting. That's my next one, is like fear. Okay? Anything that you fear, anything that you feed, that you worry about in the future, you are manifesting that. You set that in motion. And we need to do an episode on fear coming up, because what I have learned and what I want all of you to learn and experience, I know people say, thanks for the reminder, but it's like, I'm not here to remind you. I'm here to help us all apply this as a practice, as a discipline, to live our life this way. But I have learned so clearly that, well, fear, first of all, is such a beautiful, let's call it an enemy to battle with in this life. Make our life so rich, because anytime you overcome a fear and you have the experience of being courageous and conquering something, this is incredible, right? But beyond that, it's completely useless. How many times would we ever see anybody get an acceptance speech to an award, something they did and they accomplished, and they're like, I'm so glad I worried my way here. And I only wish I worried more, right? It's such a useless thing. And when you reach a point in your life where you just say, stop it, like no more, I'm not going to feed this anymore, magical things will begin happening. But it is a way in which we demanifest. Arguing for our limitations is another way. What does that mean to argue for your limitations? To convince yourself or others of why it ain't possible. And I won't stand for it on this show. Anything is possible. There's always a way. Every problem has a solution. So the limitation is a limitation of your thinking, period. And we all do it. I'm not saying I'm immune to it. I've done it myself, but I can catch myself. And that's what I want. I want you to catch yourself. It's attention again. I want you to be aware and catch yourself when you start getting into fear. Catch yourself when you begin arguing for your limitations again. And if you want to convince yourself why your dream life ain't possible, that's why I love that quote, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So if you can convince yourself why it ain't possible, you might as well. It takes the same amount of effort to convince yourself of why it is or how it could be possible. Okay. And then that final tip there is you just play around with looking at everything through the lens of all of it is manifesting, because it's all energy. Now, we could also say that there's, and I talked about this on one of the previous episodes, like your higher self is manifesting. So people say, oh, you must, you just had something crappy happen in your life. You must not be a good manifestor or something. And it's like, and then you can just like really beat yourself up. No. If your higher self wants you to grow and evolve, then your higher self may manifest people, places, things, circumstances that will force you to do that. The example I gave on the previous episode is if you want to manifest an audience of 1 million followers, but you can't handle one hater. You can't handle the heat from one negabot, one complainer. Then the universe is going to cook up that hater for you. So you get to learn and go through that experience that their insults and judgments mean nothing. You get to learn and have the experience, the lived experience of not giving your power away to a complete stranger on the internet. What a beautiful thing. So that's why I said on that first episode back, I'm here for all of it, because all of it here is good for you, for our own growth. What a beautiful way to look at it. Okay. Let me end you with 4 simple things that you can do now to manifest. The first one is to play around with this by doing something really small, setting an intent to manifest something insignificant, small, and believable for you. Just like Luke Skywalker started with levitating the rocks, he couldn't levitate the X-Wing fighter because he didn't believe it. So you want to cultivate and develop your believability muscle, your manifesting muscle. So do something super simple, super insignificant to you, and ask to see that. It could be as simple as like, I want a complete stranger to give me a compliment. I want to manifest a stick of gum. I want to, manifest, I don't know, something just like super basic, like seeing a certain thing, okay? Something that you don't care about. You don't put all that power or weight or attachment into it, and just set it and forget it. And you can even just like set a reminder for yourself every day and just kind of like, it's like really interesting because people think, oh, that's too easy. I got to put more. No, it's like, it is. It's not meant to take effort in that regard, but it has to be something that there's no doubt around. And begin there. That was something that really helped me as I started. If you wanted to bulk up at the gym, you wouldn't start bench pressing 300 pounds. You'd start with a weight that's even below what your max would be, so that you got to ease into it. Okay. All right. 3 other things I want to share with you. This helps with an abundance and manifesting of money. I want you to take, at the most, if you can, 9 $100 bills out of the bank, put it in your wallet, purse, and don't touch it. This way, every single time you take out your wallet, your credit card, you're going to see that wad of hundreds. Now, 9 is the most powerful number in manifesting in abundance. Okay, 9 is a number of abundance. So I like 9, but 3 will do. And so it's 3, 6, or 9. Don't spend this money and don't ever use it. Okay, but every time you pull out your wallet, It's an anchor for you to see that you have money, that you are abundant. You get to look at that's mine, I'm not using it, and you just tap into that feeling of abundance. Okay? Really, really simple, really, really powerful. I still do this today. I love doing it. Okay? The third one is a fun little visualization. Anytime you're walking anywhere, you go on a walk, imagine, this is going to sound silly, imagine gold flakes snowing down on you as you walk. What a silly thing. I love this one. Just imagine it's like snowing gold all around you, everywhere you walk. It's a real fun one. Have fun with that one, okay? And then the last one, I've shared this before on Instagram and TikTok, and it really blew up. This is a really powerful one. This will help anytime you have an issue with like lack or money going out, spending money. I feel uncomfortable spending money, and it's so painful when the bill comes. Get in the habit of every time you hand over the credit card or money, anytime you pay for it, you're going to spend about 10 seconds. That's all it takes to imagine the outflow of where that money is going to go. So you're at a restaurant, the bill comes, and you go, oh, it's going to go pay this waitress. It's going to pay the cooks, the hostess. It's going to pay for their living expenses. It's also going to help pay for the food expenses. And you just get a sense of the power and the influence, the change, the impact that this decision to let this money flow out is having on other people. And just get present to that. Okay? And have fun with that. Those are my 4 little tactics. Start with something small. Put 9 or at least $300 bills, 3 $100 bills in the wallet. Imagine gold falling down around you as you walk, or anytime, even right now you're listening. Just imagine it just for like a second. And then I want you to, every time you spend money, imagine money flowing out. Those are my fun little hacks for today. Hey, what'd you think of this episode? I know it was a long one. Well, it was just over an hour, but an important one. And hopefully there was something in it for you that was new. And even if there wasn't, even if it was all a reminder, that's wonderful. How did you spend this last hour? Where was your attention during this time? Do you feel like you used it wisely to create, to cause, to daydream, an intentional daydream, to imagine something new, to get excited about something new, to tune to something new and different, to move your attention? Because that was the real intention of the episode. So I hope you did. And that's why I do so many of these episodes. That's why I started this podcast, because I was looking for something that would help direct my attention and my mind so that I could continue to focus on outcome. I could continue to focus on what I wanted. I believe it's a bit of an oversimplification, but I believe at the end of the day, we tend to focus on one of 2 frames in our life. We look through life through a lens of outcomes or problems. What is wanted versus what is unwanted. It is our default. You want to look at it as like stock programming to put your attention on what is not wanted. Problem, concern, issue, threat. And it takes a little bit of willpower, a little bit of practice to focus on what you do want. And I hope you will continue to do that. And let me know how it turns out. Hey, hit me up on Instagram, send me a DM. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback from this episode. Thanks so much. And here's to manifesting some pretty cool shit. Take care. Did you know 8 out of 10 businesses fail within their very first 18 months? I believe being an entrepreneur means unlearning everything that we've been taught our entire lives about what it really means to be successful, which is why I've created a brand new audio program entitled Activate. I want to show you how to think, act, and behave like the successful entrepreneur that you were meant to be, so you can step into the vision that you have for your life and your business. And the best part is, this program is yours absolutely free. To register right now, simply visit www.jameswedmore.com/activate, and we can get started right now.